So, ladies and gentlemen, you guys know Natasha. She's joined back on the channel to give you guys a bit of insight on how to close social media marketing clients in 2020. In the interest of respecting your time, I'm gonna go ahead and somewhere around the screen pop up some timestamps. So if you just wanna go ahead and skip to a designated timestamp to get the information that you came here for, you can go ahead and do that as well. Now, before we get into this video, can you guys all go ahead and smash the like button just to show Natasha some appreciation and support for coming back on the channel and imparting this wisdom, this knowledge onto you guys, and making sure that all you guys kill it in 2020 with LinkedIn. So before we get into the 3 fundamentals of actually using LinkedIn to close social media marketing clients, first things first, I want to ask you a question, which is why LinkedIn over cold messaging, cold looms, cold email, cold calls, etc., etc.?
So I think I started cold calling for about 12 months when I first started with my agency. I tried my best when it came to cold calling, cold email, cold outreach, but the only problem was that the meetings I was actually getting and the people I was sitting in front of weren't the right quality that I was after, and that could have been partially down to my error, but I just needed a system that was going to work more consistently, more effectively, and help me zero in on the type of people that I wanted to be in front of and kind of get rid of that middle ground of qualification where I'd have to go and actually meet them in person to see if they were high or low quality or not.
So you're telling me the lead flow wasn't an issue, it was lead quality?
Yeah, lead flow with cold calling, you can still reach out to 100 people, make 100 cold calls a day and have the volume that you need, but the quality that I was finding throughout that amount of people was too small for the amount of meetings that I wanted to set in order to scale my agency at the pace that I wanted to. So after having gone through phases of cold calling, cold emailing, cold outreach, it was only when I actually discovered LinkedIn and started implementing lead generation tactics that I was learning on that platform was it that I went from being a struggling agency owner to having my first 10, 15, 20K month.
Okay, cool. So that gives you all a bit of background, as well as maybe a lot of you guys, a lot of hope. I mean, I've said this 101 different times and I'll say it once again. There are some people where LinkedIn just, quite frankly, will not work, and cold calling is their holy grail. There's some people, for example, my outreach method of choice, and at this point you guys know that everything is inbound through Facebook ads, through obviously referrals, and that's really how we get 80% of our clients. But you guys have seen in previous vlogs, and I've actually given you guys live examples, I think, in actually a video that's going to be coming out very soon, a vlog, a day in the life. But the last 20% of clients that we do get outbound, for me, that is exclusively through cold looms. So as I said, different outreach methods suit different people. Quite clearly with Natasha, cold calling, it got you the meetings that you needed, but I know especially with Natasha, she prefers a more conversational style of sales and and I hesitate to use the word laid back and less sort of outbound salesy form of outreach method. For her, that works best. The difference is really night and day from when you started implementing LinkedIn. I witnessed it firsthand. Everything really exploded from there. So as I said, that gives you guys a bit of background. It also might give you guys a bit of hope for those of you guys that are realizing that maybe cold calling isn't for you. Maybe one of these other outreach methods isn't for you, and LinkedIn can kind of come in and be your holy grail, your savior. So let's get straight into it. First things first, when we're talking about closing social media marketing clients with LinkedIn, how do you find prospective leads? How do you find potential clients on LinkedIn?
Okay, so when it comes to finding prospective clients on LinkedIn, there are 2 main obvious ways. The first way is using the free version of LinkedIn. So that is not having premium, not having Sales Navigator, not paying for anything extra. It is the basic search tool that you have. It's not very advanced and it is basic, but if you're starting out and you don't have any sort of capital, any sort of money to spend, then the free version is still going to work well for you. The second version, which I would highly recommend, and if you've watched any of the videos on my channel, you'll know that I kind of rave about Sales Navigator quite a lot. That is the second way. Within Sales Navigator, you have an advanced search tool. So when you click on advanced search, you can search for either leads, which are individual personal accounts, or for accounts, which gives you results of company pages. So when you use this advanced search tool, you can choose the geography, so the location of your ideal prospects, the company size, the title and seniority level, also the language that their profile is in. So whether you're looking for businesses that are based in France, maybe you're a French-speaking agency owner, whether it's English, whether it's Spanish, etc. You can filter all of those results down to give you the end result of something that is a prospect that is already highly qualified compared to what I was getting personally when I was doing cold calling.
A lot of you guys know that, I don't use LinkedIn. It's not in my arsenal. It's something that I know I really should spend more time on. And, when I am doing outbound lead generation for my agency, it's something that I utilize in the sense that if I've got a lead and I'm looking specifically for information on the owner, I'll scrape information from their personal Facebook profile, their Instagram profile, their LinkedIn profile. But, one thing that's very, very interesting that you're mentioning with Sales Navigator is you can find the lead and you don't even have to leave LinkedIn basically to get all the information you can need, all the relevant articles, their work history, kind of what I do by having 12 different tabs open, you get to do on LinkedIn just in one central hub, in one central spot, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, 100%. It's basically full scope. So all the information, as you said, that you're finding from all these different locations. On LinkedIn, you can literally go and do background research straight away. And you can put your account settings onto private mode as well. So if you don't want them to know that you've gone and looked at their profile, you can do it as a private session. So they can't see that you've gone and looked at their profile. You can see what companies they've worked at previously, if they're attached to a company page, see if they've hired anyone new recently, if they've received any special awards or had any sort of cool announcements or achievements that you can use as a way in to compliment them on what they've achieved so far and maybe open that conversation up.
So we've talked about why LinkedIn, then we talked about how to actually use LinkedIn to find leads. Now, once you've found the lead, we actually just mentioned earlier how with say something like Sales Navigator, honestly, even just the free version of LinkedIn, there's so much background information about the person. There's so much content that they may be posting themselves, they may be reposting. You can see their kind of work history, etc., etc. So whether you got the paid version or not, doesn't really matter. Point is, there's a lot of conversation starters there. But my next point that I want to touch on is what is the most reliable way to actually get a response from a prospective lead?
100%. So in terms of the most effective way to get a response from a prospective lead, the big bulk of the work happens before you've actually said anything to them in the first place. So before I reach out to someone, and what you said before, what you do is before you're sending a cold loom to a cool business that you want to work with, you're going to go and look at their Facebook profile, their LinkedIn profile, see what content they're posting, find out information about them and their business so that you have context for when you're actually approaching them and comparing them to competitors and figuring out how you can help them solve a problem that they're suffering with in their business. So with LinkedIn, I do exactly the same thing. I'll go to their account, to their profile. I'll find out as much information as possible to be able to spark a conversation with them in the first place. So doing that account background research to see what you can actually touch on before you reach out with them gives you a way to build common ground, and obviously people like to relate to the person that's reaching out to them. So if you can reach out to them in a way that is understanding them and their business, speaking their language from the content that they post, from their profile, from their copy, they are 10 times more likely to respond. On the flip side of that, once you have done your outreach, you need to remember to follow up, because a lot of the time, if someone doesn't respond to you on LinkedIn, people just assume that they're not interested and that it's a no. But the more touch points you have with that person, the higher the chance that they're actually going to get back to you or see your messages. And with LinkedIn, if you're reaching out to somebody that's maybe receiving a high volume of inbound sales pitches and messages every single day, they might just not have seen your message. They might not be super active. And if you just reach out to them 7 days later, that could be make or break as to whether they actually see your message, because it's bumped up to the top of that inbox compared to just drowned out in the rest of the messages that may not help them as much as you and your service if you get them on a phone call.
Mm-hmm. So obviously you're in a very unique position where you've consulted almost 100 plus agency owners, service providers, coaches, consultants through either your agency or through one-on-one. Mm-hmm. So very interesting to hear, what's kind of the most cringy thing you see, or what's one, when people are reaching out to potential clients, what's one thing that is an absolute no-no, or you see and you're just that's never ever gonna work?
So I would say, that's a tough question, but I would say the main thing that just chills my bones when I see it, I'm just it makes me cringe on the inside, because I just see it and I'm just as a business owner, and as most of the people that I work with are business owners as well, you've got to think about, if you received that message, would that work on you? And if the answer is no, then why are you sending it? Where did that idea come from? And that is just people who are delivering a sales pitch before that person has even put their hand up or shown any sign of interest. So I used to do this, and I'll hold my hands up and say that when I first started using LinkedIn, I used it in completely the wrong way, and I guess I'm kind of grateful I did, because it helped me learn what didn't work so that I could figure out what did work. But I used to just send these long salesy messages pitching someone before they'd even had a chance to get to know me or understand who I am and what I do and how I could help them. And that is just an instant turn off. And also the thing with that is that you could be lucky and get someone that is kind of the right time, so that luck of when you're appearing in their life they actually need you. But most of the time it's somebody who is going to see you offering like a free audit or a free call or a free benefit, and because there's so little resistance, they don't have to do anything for it. They're just going to do it for the free consultation, and it doesn't tend to lead to a high quality conversion. So I would say focusing on building a relationship and using social selling, so actually engaging with that person, conversing with them, asking them what their problems are before you try and offer a solution, instead of just shoving a solution down their throat which literally screams, hey, please can you like pay me for my service?
Okay, so last question that I want to ask, or last thing that I want to kind of dig deep into, and we could probably, literally carry on this conversation for 3-4+ hours, because just from, everything you've told me and from everything that I've seen sort of in my limited experience with it, it's a platform that's really hit maturity in the past few years. And I mean, it's just, there's so many possibilities with it, or not only in terms of outbound, in terms of inbound as well. But one thing that I want to talk about is automation. So automation in 2020, because from what I hear, LinkedIn is really clamping down on automation tools and automation services. So is that something that's still viable in 2020?
Okay, yeah, so this topic has come up a lot. I think there's been a lot of buzz around whether automation is good or bad, whether you should use it, whether there are dangers using automation in terms of LinkedIn being more aware and being more switched on as to knowing whether you're using it or not. Now, it is against LinkedIn's regulations to use automation, so I would recommend keeping away from it if possible. Now, there are a few different sides to this. So in terms of the kind of automation that you're using, a big mistake that a lot of people make is they see all these like cheap automation tools and they're like, oh, amazing, I can pay £5 a month, have this automation tool do all the work for me, and I'm just gonna have inbound leads coming in, I'm making so much money. The one problem with this, these tools used to work, but as more and more people are using them, obviously it's not a benefit for LinkedIn, and they've seen so many people try and abuse it and become quite spammy, and it's deterring users, so it's not a good thing for LinkedIn. And the problem with these cheaper automation tools is that they are all attached to the same IP address, so a lot of them are Chrome add-ons, so you just kind of add it onto your Chrome, you click the little button and it shows a pop-up, and you can set it to do certain tasks like send connection messages and welcome messages, etc., etc. With this, if you have an automation tool, say 100 people purchase this automation tool, and I used to use Meet Leonard, that's one of the ones I used to use. If 100 people use that tool, it's 100 people shooting from the same location on a map. So LinkedIn can track if there's a lot of basically pings coming from one place, it can see that and say, okay, this person is from this part of London, but it's also 3,000 other people from this house. It doesn't make sense. So that's when it's really obvious and clear to LinkedIn that it is an automation tool, which is when we'll be like, okay, you're using automation, that's against the regulations. It's probably gonna push down your profile in terms of ranking. It's just not really worth the risk. There are certain automation tools. There's one that I use, which is quite a lot pricier, so it's around the $100 a month mark. Now, I don't even use it to its full capacity. I used to use it for sending out connection messages, welcome messages, drip campaigns. But what I found to be most effective is if you don't have the time, and what I would recommend is doing it manually, so taking the time to do everything yourself and focusing on maybe a smaller volume, so a lower volume of outreach, but higher quality prospects, instead of just high volume with a basic message where your response rate is going to be probably similar if you just do a smaller amount of accounts and you just personalize the message. Doing that if you don't have the time, so say you're working 9-to-5 job, you could be a parent, whatever the situation is. If you have to use automation, I would recommend using it just for sending the connection request, because you have such a limited amount of characters you can use anyway to personalize it that it doesn't make too much of a difference. And then after you connect with that person, doing everything as a manual follow-up. So it still helps you automate the volume in terms of outreach, and you can spend less time just picking up the slack in terms of responding to people at the end of the day after they accept your request.
So I hope you guys found that useful. Now, as I said, I don't use LinkedIn in my arsenal of outreach, but Natasha actually taught in the last version of Agency Incubator, which was 6-figure estimate, and thousands of students found that module super helpful, and actually then went on to close multiple clients from that using LinkedIn. So it really can be something for many agency owners that's totally transformative transformative. And it's for that reason that I actually urge you guys to go in the description. I'll also leave it somewhere here. Go in the description and actually book in a call with Natasha, book in a discovery call. I've seen people use LinkedIn to sign the smaller clients, $1,500 a month clients, the $3,000 a month client, $8,000 a month clients, and then onwards of $15,000 a month clients, really that you get into the agency world to be working with. There are some very, very big heavy hitters on LinkedIn, and the more time you spend on LinkedIn and the more outbound you do, eventually you're really building strong foundations, and that comes back around in the form of inbound. And what I mean by that is at a certain point with LinkedIn, once you've built up a really good foundation, is leads actively come to you. So as I said, if you already have an agency and you're serious about taking it to the next level, go ahead and book in a discovery call with Natasha. I know Natasha's worked personally one-on-one with 100+ students of GrowYourAgency, as well as over a dozen+ companies through her LinkedIn lead generation agency. So all in all, total boss. So as I said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that video. Go out, close some clients using LinkedIn, and I'll see you guys in the next one.